Well, good morning and welcome to all. I'm going to begin by making you aware that council meetings are available live through Zoom, and recordings may be posted online on County of Huron's YouTube channel. You may be seen and or heard as part of these broadcasts, and your name, comments, and or presentation materials will become part of the public record. And with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And starting off with some warden's remarks, I just want to remind everyone that today, April the 9th, is Vimy Ridge Day, and it's to honor and remember those who served in the decisive Battle of Vimy Ridge 108 years ago today in 1917, the day the battle started. And the Canadian flag is on the Peace Tower at Parliament Hill is lowered to half-mast, and this gives us an opportunity to reflect on our past and to recognize from that point the Canadian nationalism that really took off building our nation through that. And just a reminder that it was a costly victory. So I hope you take opportunity today to just have some thoughts on that. And sometimes thinking about those important dates in the past help us give a perspective on where we're going in the future. And also, some of our fellow councillors and staff attended the Good Roads Conference last week, and I was able to attend, and just wanted to make note that I was able to attend one session where our own Derry Wallace was part of a panel giving a presentation about asset management through an environmental lens. So just Derry did a good job with that and represented Huron County well. So that's what the warden's remarks. And I would now be looking for a motion to approve the agenda. That's Councillor Basnet, and Councillor Anderson would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. Is there any pecuniary interest to declare at this time? Seeing none, then there are 3 sets of minutes to adopt, and I'd be looking for someone to do that. So that's Councillor Vanstone and Councillor Elvin McClellan would second that. Those in favor? That is carried. And we do have a delegation this morning, and this is going to be presented by Jay McGuffin from Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, and Jay is going to be joining us online. And Susan, Jay, welcome Jay, good to have you with us, and we'll just turn it over to you at this time.
Good morning, Warden, and thank you, and good morning to members of council and members of the public. I'd like to thank you for allowing me this moment to speak in delegation. I'm here, Jay McGuffin, President, Principal Planner for Monteith Brown Planning Consultants. On behalf of our client CVD Group, our client owns 43 acres of land north of Thames Road East and Highway 4 inside the settlement area of the boundary of North Exeter. Legal description of the property, Concession 1, Part Lot 21. The reason I'm here today is in regard to the South Huron official plan update and our client's land use designations within that official plan and some of the matters that have been ongoing for the past several years. The westerly third of that property has historically been designated for highway commercial, while the remaining 2/3 of the lands are industrial. They were formally draft plan approved for highway commercial and industrial blocks, and an application in 2022 to extend the draft plan approval on the property was refused by South Huron Council and County Council. Direction at the time was that there was a desire to see, well, I guess there's 2 pieces. One was there was concerns about infrastructure inside London Road and capacities and availabilities for dealing with the development of the subdivision. And one of the other matters was a desire by the municipality and the county planner to consider the property, that part designated highway commercial, for mixed use development, which would be a combination of commercial and residential. The draft plan lapsed April 6, 2022, and we were retained by CVD Group to work on a mixed-use development proposal that we've been working in consultation with the municipality and the county since that time. 2022 was our request for pre-consultation formally on the matter. And in January of 2023, we went in for that formal pre-consultation. And since that time, we have been working on a presentation or a proposal for our client. The biggest impediment in bringing anything forward at this time is the requirements of the Ministry of Transportation in regard to their corridor control in this location is extremely restrictive and does not lend itself to highway commercial uses. There is, to put it bluntly, a requirement for a 300 to 400 meter setback before an access on the interior of the road can be made. That means a public road would have to be developed into the lands to extend upwards of 400 meters into the property before you can turn off that road to access the site. And then you would have to essentially construct a private road that would extend back to London Road for highway commercial development. So we have been working diligently with the Ministry of Transportation and our clients' transportation engineers to get a mixture of land uses that the ministry will accept. Having said that, our client was caught off guard recently with the proposed update that was going to council last month. And I should also mention that in April of 2024, our client provided a $700,000 payment to the municipality in consultation and as part of infrastructure improvements, as part of the connecting link upgrades in Highway 4 at this location in front of their property. The proposed South Huron official plan came forward and maintained the existing highway commercial designation on the front portion of the property and did not give consideration for the mixed-use residential development that our client had been advancing for the past 2.5 years now. The issue, of course, is exacerbated in that part of the South Huron official plan proposal contemplates an extension of the settlement area boundary to add additional residential lands into the community. And given land use planning requirements on land use changes to accommodate development, our client has significant concerns of the impact that will have on them going forward in order to make a viable mixed-use development occur at this location. We have been in consultation with staff at the County Planning Department, and we understand and have reviewed a proposed modification by the County Planning Department to the South Huron official plan in regard to our client's concerns. We haven't had an opportunity to review that with our client. Our client has accepted that proposed modification. And subsequently, we were able to meet with South Huron Council this past Monday on the 7th of April, basically to go through this same presentation, just to identify why this modification is arising. And essentially, what we're here before council today is to request that on behalf of our client, thanking planning staff for listening and hearing the concerns, thanking South Huron Council for listening to us this past Monday night and hearing our concerns, and would like to request that Huron County Council consider and approve the proposed modification in regard to our clients' lands, which will leave the door open and not hold them to the scrutiny of having to undertake a land needs study in order to facilitate a proposed residential conversion of a portion of the lands that are currently designated highway commercial. I won't bother to read the recommendation. It is provided in Ms. Van Amersfoort's presentation that is before council today. I would just like to thank the County Council and staff for their assistance in this matter and hope that County Council will see fit to approve the modification as requested.
Thank you, Jay. And I'm going to just suggest that if there's any questions from council for Jay, that would be appropriate at this time. If there's any questions for staff, we would address that under 9.1. So is there any questions for Jay? Not seeing any, Jay, so thank you for the presentation and making us aware of you and your client stand there.
Thank you, Board.
So then we have a recommended motion to receive this presentation by Jay McGuffin. And I'd look for that Councillor Noel, and Councillor Ginn would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. We'll move on to councillor comments, if there is any. Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I attended the OGRA conference, and at one of the sessions, and this was actually the AOR's annual meeting, I was surprised that this was just an announcement from the podium from the Good Roads Board, in the fact that they didn't do this in more of a session that would have more political leaders, but AOR's or the Good Roads Board is stating that they have been working on a financial program, and if I understood correctly, that they are planning as of this spring to have funds available where they will basically do financing like we have done through the province, except at a 1% reduced rate over what the province will lend money out for construction projects, highway projects, things like that. That seems like a pretty big deal to have not been announced in the main auditorium. So maybe Imran was even in that meeting. I'm not sure. He may be aware of it. He may have already passed it on to Mike, but if not, and I couldn't type fast enough, and I didn't want to speak into my phone when somebody else was speaking, but they basically said go to info@goodroads.ca and go to bond initiative, and that's where the information apparently can be found. So I thought that was pretty important for us to at least look into and find out what the details of that were. If I may have a second, Mr. Warden, item. When Huron County Federation of Agriculture was supposed to have their MP and MPP meeting, and it got canceled because of the federal election coming up, I was going to raise a topic. I had a very good discussion with Vicki Lass, and I was really happy to find out that there was someone else that was on the same page of wavelength that I was, because that doesn't happen very often. So, but one of the things that I wanted to raise to Lisa at that meeting, and I thought that was a good spot to do it because it was in front of all of the agricultural groups in the county, is that we've got a problem with how we move forward in this county and what our taxpayers actually pay for property taxes. And it's almost a problem created by the province in the fact that we do want to protect farmland. I understand that completely. The province thinks it's a priority, but they also want us to build houses. They want us to bring young people back into the community. They want us to have industry to be able to have these people here. How can we protect the farmland and bring these people back in and turn farmland into housing and areas for business? And by bringing the people back, bringing new houses in, new businesses, we can reduce the overall tax rate to people, but we're technically subsidizing the farming community at this point. And I'm not blaming the farmers for this. This is a fault of the way the system changed at the province. So when the province used to pay back the 75% to the municipalities, now that they don't, we now take that 75%, add it back into the tax bill, and everybody pays a bigger proportion. I understand that rural communities and small communities in this county are subsidizing the farming community, but if we're not here to do it, then the farmers won't be here either if we're not here to support them. But somehow the province has got to figure out a way to compensate purely rural or agricultural communities to some extent. If you don't want us getting rid of the farmland and turning it into things where we can raise more tax dollars, then somehow compensate us with an offset somewhere in the budget so that we're not paying the lion's share to basically feed the rest of the province or the country. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for yourself and or any others to sit down and have that kind of discussion with Lisa. I wanted to do it at that meeting. The meeting got canceled, and I don't know when it's rescheduled for at this point. But I think this is an important issue to raise. Certainly now is as important as any time when there's so much turmoil going on. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and it's something we'll give some consideration to. So, all right, thank you for that. Any other councillor comments? Councillor Klopp.
Thank you. I to my colleague, use the word subsidize. The rest of the communities are subsidizing the farmers. I certainly hope that doesn't get put in the paper. I don't think you meant it that way. The frustration, I get it. Farm programs are supposed to keep farmers farming. Farmers are quitting because their sons and daughters go, they don't want us. So that's when land comes up for sale. So we need to have programs like supply management for farmers. You don't see those farmers. There's usually somebody who wants to farm. Now, maybe someone doesn't want it because it's still hard work. Doesn't mean you make a profit. I know a guy that had 2 quotas and he went broke. So it is, but it guarantees you something. Us and the pork and the cattle and the crops. We fight with weather. They give us farm supports, but most of the time they're, as a guy used the analogy, you're in 40 feet of water and those farm programs that are subsidies, it's usually out, you know, if you're out in 40 feet of water, the rope is 30 feet. You still don't get it. My colleagues in urban areas, of which we all pay taxes, go, well, you got a subsidy because I get unemployment insurance. And I said, I wish ours worked that way. So it's been an ongoing thing. So yes, the farm organizations are asking for, we get paid up front. We start co-ops. We do a lot of things and it hasn't gotten any easier. And of course, now we've got a new issue thrown on us. But to say the issue is simply the farmers, because of you're going back to the 75% rebate, I can assure you that, what is it, a third, 25% of the farm buildings and assets are assessed. The house in 1 acre is assessed as exactly as everybody else, whether you live in Seaforth or Kirkton or out in the side road. So, and the land part has actually gotten to the point now where, because it's based on assessment, your barns and land have gone up higher. So really, we've been paying a lot. What happened was the other shoe, the province back in 2000 guaranteed everybody that money that was being paid by the farmers, the rebate, which was 75% of your total bill. So in my case, I remember it well because it was about $1,000 I paid in taxes, and then $750 was given back to me, but everybody got their $1,000. The next year when it went up $1,100, that program right across the whole area was supposed to have been guaranteed. And of course, when the government needed to cut money, they started cutting that because that was just us politicians arguing. So I appreciate the frustration. It is what it is there. I just didn't want to have the word, I didn't want to have it feeling, because I don't think you meant that the rest of the community, including the farmers, as I point out, are paying on 1 acre. They're paying assessment, and land is now a lot more than but that time my assessment was based on $1,600 an acre. I can assure you it's assessed a whole lot higher. And corn is still about the same price or less, just so you know. And hogs, I got $200 for hogs back in the 1975 era, 1980s, and they're not much different now. So I think that word subsidy isn't what you meant, and I just want that on the record.
Okay. Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, and maybe it was a mischoice of word. And instead of subsidy, I've got no problem with basically stating it as all taxpayers in Huron County pay more to offset the 75% that the province used to put in, which basically was there to help protect the farming community and farmland. So without that there, we've got one of two choices. Do we either protect farmland, which is a vital resource, or do we start growing more houses and businesses to try and reduce the tax rate for everybody in the county? A decision has to be made, and I think the province certainly needs to be involved in that discussion. Thank you.
All right, Past Warden McNeil.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Warden. And along with others, on county council and municipal council in our respective municipalities attended the Good Roads Convention. And there were a number of really, really worthwhile sessions, and I agree with past Warden McClellan of the announcement at AORS regarding the interest rate that was available, and I'm sure that our treasurer will look into that. There were about 4 sessions that really stood out to me. One was Emerging Municipal Leaders Forum on the first day, and our CAO has indicated the amount of turnover in our staff and how long they've been here with the county, and Huron County is not unique to that. That is everywhere, and attraction and retention is very important moving forward. There was another very interesting presentation on transporting used nuclear fuel, and it will be, the proposal is now to Ignace, and there's probably more questions than answers as far as that process is concerned. Along with that, there was an interesting panel on the future of Canada-US relations, and it changes daily and sometimes hourly. And that's an ongoing issue. And the last one I'd like to comment about was municipal roundabouts, best practices and innovations. And I found that very, very interesting because we are pursuing that within Huron County. And the facts that they brought forward, I felt were very relevant to Huron County. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
All right, thank you. Any other councillor comments? All right, we do have a consent agenda with 8 items. Is there any specific item anybody wants to speak to on that list? And if there is not, then I'd be looking for a motion to receive for information. So that motion is made by Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Heffer. Those in favor? And that is carried. We're now at planning and development, and we're going to be looking at the South Huron official plan and the 5-year review, and Denise Van Amersfoort is going to be presenting that for us. And just like to make you aware, this is not a public meeting, so no one other than council will be asked for comments when Denise is wrapping it up. Whenever you're ready, Denise, you go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Warden, members of County Council, fellow staff, and members of the public. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Denise Van Amersfoort. I'm the Manager of Planning for the County of Huron, and I will be presenting South Huron's official plan 5-year review process on behalf of my colleagues, Selena McIntosh and myself this morning. So this has been a project that's been completed over the past year in partnership with local municipal staff at South Huron. We did sort of kick off the project approximately 12 months ago, undertook a very significant public consultation process, series of drafts in doing full analysis of a very wide and broad range of issues, looking for creative solutions, I would say, where we could. And I'm proud to say that the 5-year review has been adopted by local council, and we are here today looking for approval from County Council, as you are the approval authority for the local official plan reviews. So as we all know, the official plans provide vision in terms of future growth and how do we guide and manage change in our communities. A 5-year review is an opportunity to reflect on what's changed, what are the new challenges facing our community, and how do we need to respond in terms of shifts that help us to meet the changing world? As I said, the previous 5-year review was done in South Huron in 2014. So it had been a little bit more than 10 years since we had done this review, which did influence the process that was undertaken. So we are a province-led planning system in Ontario. All official plans, whether they're at the local or the upper tier, are required to be consistent with the provincial planning statement. In addition, Huron County has an official plan which sets high-level direction for the local municipalities, and all local official plans must conform to the Huron County official plan. So that review was undertaken as part of this process. When I think about the things that stand out as part of this 5-year review, as perhaps other 5-year reviews I've been involved with, I think the public consultation was very unique for 3 reasons. Firstly, we started with a series of community tables. So these were discussions that we had with landowners in advance of writing the first draft. We sat down in person to talk about different thematic areas. So we would invite people who were interested to talk to us about housing, about agriculture, natural areas. Other community tables were geographically focused, one on Exeter, one on the Lakeshore, Osborne, and Stephen Ward. What I found was just when you have a group of people sitting around a table, just an incredible opportunity to have really in-depth, valuable discussions. That input informed the first draft. It led to a very robust first draft that didn't see a lot of other really significant changes throughout the course of the review, save and except for the PPS 2024, which was dropped in October of last year. The other things we did, full consultation with our agency partners, so folks like Huron Perth Public Health, Perth Huron Builders Association, Chippewas of Kettle and Stony Point. And we also thought about how do we do the consultation process? How do we communicate the project? And how do we make sure we're being as inclusive as possible? On the communication side, in addition to those in-depth community tables, we also did a mail out to every resident with a postcard. The purpose of this was to try to grab folks' attention to make sure that they knew the 5-year review was happening and that they knew how to get more information and how to participate. The postcards were incredibly well received. It directed them to the open house, and I can't tell you how many people who walked into the open house were carrying that postcard. We also did pop-ups at the farmers market, and for the first time for a 5-year review, we used an online viewer. So if you look on your screen in the top right-hand corner, that is an online ArcGIS platform. It was built by our internal GIS staff. What it allowed was for a landowner to click on this viewer, they could find their property and see what the proposed land use designations in the official plan would be. It was incredibly effective, and I think it also is very respectful of people's time. People are busy, they maybe don't have a chance to come out to an open house. This allowed them at their leisure to go on, take a look, provided everything looked good. In most cases, we didn't hear from them. If there were concerns, they had opportunity to follow up with staff. So overall, again, just a really excellent public consultation process that did certainly have major bearing on the amendment that we have before us today. Policy revisions also respond and are informed too by studies. So the Huron County population and housing projections that were done were used to inform the changes. South Huron undertook a municipal water and wastewater master plan in tandem with the official plan. This was incredibly effective in that what we need to make sure is that when we're changing land use designations or we're evaluating land use designations, we're evaluating how they align with available infrastructure. Planned infrastructure. It's no help if we have infrastructure on one side of a community and land use designations on the other side. These two pieces need to move together. And so again, I'm very appreciative for South Huron Council taking the leadership of having that master plan information available to us. A series of other studies completed in recent years were also integrated. The 5-year review saw all of the maps updated. The goal was to increase the accessibility and the overall user friendliness. We simplified designations where possible, and we made sure to accurately reflect the delineation between agriculture and natural environment areas, as there has been change on the landscape over that past 10 years. So I'll go through what we heard from the community and how we responded in terms of changes. I'll stop on this slide for a minute. I think this was a really interesting observations to hear from community members. What had they observed? What stood out to them in terms of what's changed in South Huron over the past 10 years? The most commonly raised comment that we received was in regards to the rising cost of housing and how that was not keeping pace with the wages that are available in the area. The loss of rental stock, increase in short-term rentals, visible homeless populations, continued trend of retirees moving to the area, in some cases creating service demands, increase in larger farm operations, rising farmland values and increased foreign or developer interest, more frequent high-intensity rain events, the impact of the emerald ash borer on local woodlots, increased diversity of communities, and the lingering effects of COVID-19 on local businesses and communities. So just incredibly insightful comments, and again, very much aligned with many of the things that come across this table on a regular basis. So we completed reviews of all the policy frameworks, and in many cases, they were in good shape. Agriculture, for sure, it's that careful balance between wanting to protect the agricultural land base, but also provide enough flexibility for the housing that the agricultural economy needs, opportunities for different types of investments, such as on-farm diversified uses. And so we had done a really thorough review and felt that overall the policies were in great shape. We did need to make some changes in terms of reflecting the need for an ag systems approach, and also new requirements for agricultural impact assessments at the time that non-farm uses are proposed in the agricultural area. I thought I'd include just sort of, how is this good for South Huron? We've definitely integrated some flexibility for housing across the county. And these are some examples right from South Huron of where those policies are being used and I think being effective for agriculture. In terms of the natural areas, we did make changes to implement the natural environment update for Huron County. We did reduce for adjacent lands, not only for provincially significant wetlands, reducing those adjacent lands from 120 meters down to 30 meters. It'll actually be 30 meters for all natural areas moving forward. We have an increased focus on the value of natural spaces to mitigate the impacts of a changing climate. So if you read through the policies, you will see there's much more of a presence, or much more of a focus, I would say, on climate change and how do our natural spaces help us to adapt and mitigate. And then again, strong focus as always on making sure that we're directing development away from natural hazards, so certainly any flood-prone areas. In terms of aggregate, not as much aggregate in the former Stephen ward, but certainly in the former Usborne ward. This was an opportunity for us to update the mapping, and we did have the benefit of the updated aggregate strategy that was approved here at the county level. What you'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen, there are a series of areas in former Usborne which have been exhausted. So the aggregate designations have been removed, those licenses have been surrendered, and so the 5-year review is an opportunity for us to tidy up that mapping. So what you'll see on the left picture, that was the former designation. And on the right-hand side, what you'll see now is what was an aggregate deposit is now returned to agriculture and a significant water body that is a result of aggregate extraction. I did have the opportunity to visit this particular water body and had a chance to actually walk around and drive around a portion of it. And again, it did certainly help as I was working on the aggregate strategy to be thinking about what are the other opportunities that we could consider for whether it's development in proximity to a water body, and what are the things we need to be thinking about if that is proposed. So preparing and managing for growth, this was the bulk of the review. And these are the questions we were asking of ourselves as staff and as local municipal council. We really wanted to be thoughtful about the scale and type of growth that's anticipated. How much do we anticipate South Huron is going to grow in terms of total population? Then what does that population growth translate into in terms of projected housing needs? How many housing units? From there, we would analyze, based on minimum density requirements and the projected number of housing needs, what land base do we need to accommodate this growth? So we would undertake what's called a land needs assessment, and we'd be looking for both employment areas, residential, and then general urban uses. How much land do we need designated to accommodate growth? And again, as a consultant Jay mentioned this morning, land needs assessments do have fairly strict requirements from the province. We are required and directed as planners to designate those lands which are required for growth within the planning horizon. So a minimum of 20 years, no more than 30 years is the planning horizon. So that was sort of the exercise that was undertaken. And there are a series of settlement area changes, which I will move through next. So just before we get started, in terms of the sort of the collection of settlement areas that we have in South Huron. What's different in South Huron as compared to some of the other areas across the county is the number of settlement areas that are fully serviced with both water and sanitary, and then additionally, those settlement areas that all have public water. So it's actually only 3 areas that don't have public water, being the tertiary settlement areas. So a much higher proportion of primary and secondary developments in South Huron as comparatively across the county. So in terms of when we are thinking about where is the community going to grow? Where are we directing growth? You'll notice in the body of my report, I do note that there's a different growth allocation strategy for South Huron as compared to the county as a whole. When we think about the county as a whole, 65% of overall growth is directed to primary settlement areas. In South Huron, that number is increased to 75%. What we're saying and what we've observed historically is that a higher percentage of growth has occurred and is directed to occur in our fully serviced settlement areas moving forward. That is aligned with provincial planning direction, and that there's a very strong focus now on planning for complete communities. So that's looking at settlement areas that have not only the water and sewer services, but also that full suite of soft services, thinking about grocery stores, medical services, schools, parks, and alike. So there are 4 settlement areas that have more significant adjustments, and so I will walk through those next. I'll just give a bit of an overview. The 4 are Centralia, an addition of 15 acres specifically for employment lands. Crediton, we are looking at a reduction of 50 acres. Exeter, an addition of 75 acres specifically for residential. And Greater Grand Bend, there are 2 areas of growth. One will have an urban designation. It's 40 acres along Highway 21. And there's an addition of 130 acres along County Road 81, or what's known as Grand Bend Line and Mollard Line, as it abuts the settlement area of Grand Bend within the municipality of Lambton Shores. So we'll go through each one. In terms of employment areas, South Huron's inventory certainly was reviewed and is overall in good shape. Exeter does have a lot of industrial lands, but they're very large parcels. In terms of what we're hearing from an investment attraction perspective, it would be advantageous to have some smaller serviced industrial sites as opposed to larger sites. So that's something the municipality can work on next. In Huron Park, there has been a number of investments over the past 10 years. Nudie would be one industry I'd note, also the trailer manufacturer. There's also just been expansions of the other businesses that existed there. So we did see a need for some additional lands, and we identified a parcel in Centralia. This parcel is located between the current settlement, the southern settlement area boundary of Centralia, and a property which has a rural industrial designation. For most people around the room will recognize the Great Lakes Agra property or the former Dashwood Industries as you're coming along Highway 4. That property is actually not in a settlement area. It's a bit of a legacy property. We've designated it rural industrial, and the portion that we'd like to expand onto, the 15 acres, is sort of the piece in between the settlement area of Centralia and that CanAgra property. So the next map on the left-hand side shows it well. This property is owned by an abutting industry. It allows for an opportunity for co-location of employment uses. I would also note that the property has water, wastewater, 3-phase power, natural gas, the full suite of infrastructure running by the property. So this is, I think, a good example of where we can make good use of the investment that's already been made into that infrastructure. A relatively minor change for employment lands out at the Grand Bend Motorplex. This was a property, in fact, that had, it was split with 2 designations, one being a rural commercial, one being a rural industrial. Given that the land use is currently industrial, we felt it would just be cleaner in terms of facilitating future growth if we tidied that up. I would note as well, the Grand Bend is another example of more of a historic legacy property. The Grand Bend Motorplex or the Grand Bend Airport harkens back to the World War II times in Huron County. And so again, a bit of a legacy piece. It is outside of town. There are some real benefits in the sense that it is fully serviced. And because it's not located near any sensitive uses, it allows for some more heavy industry to establish in a way that wouldn't have land use compatibility conflicts with a neighboring residential area, as we do sometimes run into in our small towns and villages. So that change was certainly well received by Lambton Shores. They indicated that they do not have a significant inventory of employment lands within their municipality, and this is quite close geographically speaking. For Exeter, we are looking at a settlement area expansion on the east side of town, 70 acres of residential land. The land is located between a golf course, the existing settlement area boundary, and a strip of development that was historically settled along Huron Road. This certainly aligns with that water wastewater master plan and allows for the utilization of existing capacity within a pump station to the north. So it certainly promotes comprehensive and integrated planning for future residential development in Exeter. For Grand Bend, this was a more of a unique exercise in that the previous version, I should say, still the current version of the South Huron official plan, spoke to the need for a secondary plan for what was known as a Port Blake planning area. So we had an opportunity to review this with South Huron and to sort of think about, is this the tool, in fact, that we need to help manage growth in this area? What was also really important from a planning standpoint to note is that over the past 10 years, Lambton Shores has draft plan approved development to their eastern borders, both along Grand Bend Line as well as Mollard Line. So those areas are set up essentially to bring the development into Huron County. There is road stubs and infrastructure ready on our side of the line, but we didn't have any land designated there. And so we had an opportunity to sit down with Lambton Shores staff. Very grateful to their CAO, Steve McCauley, my counterpart, Will Nywenning from Lambton County, to sit down and talk about how would we design a cross-border planning framework that doesn't cross just a local boundary between Lambton Shores and South Huron, but actually goes over a county border, what is Lambton County and Huron County. So what's really interesting, if you drive down Mollard Line and you look to the west, those properties are essentially bisected north-south by the border between Lambton and Huron. So this is our first time, I would say, sitting down to write planning policy to facilitate cross-county border growth. It was a great partnership between the two municipalities, and I think we're very hopeful that what this leads to is a complete community model for Grand Bend, recognizing that certain aspects of that complete community will be on the Lambton Shores side and other aspects will be on the South Huron side. So again, designation expansion, as you'll see, along County Road 81 or Grand Bend Line on the north side, and then as well extending down Mollard Line. We did also have one other expansion in Grand Bend, and this goes north on Highway 21. The purpose here was to align with infrastructure planning. There has been some growth to the north along Highway 21 in recent years, known as the Soul Haven Plan of Subdivision. There's also been some extensive EA work in looking at how could we extend municipal services up Highway 21 for other development opportunities. I would say that we did have some concerns from Ministry of Transportation as we are on a provincial highway. So what you may recall from the ACW official plan is we took the approach of using an urban designation as opposed to designation specific. So when we're working with MTO, what they're going to require at the time of a designation is that we know what the specific land use is. And at the time of a 5-year review in rural Ontario, that's simply not realistic. We are not going to know that. So our MTO partners have important jobs to do. They are there to protect the corridor. And so we were able to use the same approach in ACW, which was that we would signal with an urban designation, this land will be developed for an urban designation. At the time that the specific land use is known, there would be a site-specific official plan amendment. That's exactly the approach that we are now taking north of Grand Bend. And I do think it's an example of where we are working with our ministry partners to try to advance, priorities and safety, I think, for the corridor. I would also note in this area, years back, under the Green Energy Act, we did have a commercial wind turbine project that established quite close to what is now the settlement area boundary. Within the South Huron official plan, given that the Green Energy Act has now been repealed, we have added very specific direction that any new commercial wind turbine projects need to locate a minimum of 1 kilometer from a settlement area boundary, excepting tertiary settlement areas, which we do not expect to expand. That's something that I think would be beneficial to be thinking about across the county, as it is possible we will see additional commercial wind turbine projects come forward. So next we'll go to Crediton. So Crediton has been the subject of much discussion throughout the review. When we were doing the land needs assessment, what we saw was that there was 433 acres designated for development outside of the settlement area of Exeter. 200 of those acres were located within the settlement area of Crediton. And so the same question we ask ourselves, how much growth do we anticipate? What does that translate to into housing units? And do we have enough land designated? In this case, what came back was we actually had more land designated, significantly more land designated than what we believe is required. Based on projected growth, projected housing growth. So there are 3 areas that were proposed for de-designation. Initially, there was a much larger de-designation proposed at the northeast quadrant, but in consultation with that landowner, staff did reassess and sort of stepped back from an initial de-designation that would have been in the order of 67 acres, and we reduced that down to 17 acres, leaving them a 50-acre parcel for future development. So on the west side of King, what you'll notice is that both north and south of Victoria Avenue, which is the county road, we do have de-designations. And then there is a further piece that's on the east side of King, north of Victoria, and that's the 17-acre piece that's really been the subject of a lot of discussion. The pieces to the west, what I would say there is that they don't have road access. In one case, they would have to construct roads. On the south case, they're not included in the existing servicing and infrastructure design for Crediton. And I think there's a recognition that the development of these parcels is unlikely. And so the piece that has been subject to more discussion, and we did receive another letter that came in actually after the time of my staff report, was on the 17 acres. So this landowner has indicated that they are interested in development. They have done some work in terms of an archaeological assessment and a functional servicing design. The request from that landowner is that the 17 acres be left within the settlement area boundary for future development. Again, lots of discussion. Lots of concept plans brought forward. Unfortunately, some of the concept plans did serve to sort of create some misunderstanding in the community. What you'll notice in the council package today is that there are some comments from members of the public requesting that South Huron Council not approve the residential development. I think that's an example of where, again, there was some misunderstanding about what the task was in front of us. But I would say at this time, the correspondence that's been provided, on balance, I would say that there is the opportunity for some clarification. I am supportive of the pieces on the west side going ahead today with the de-designation, but I do think that I would recommend to council that we defer the 17-acre de-designation from the Stephen lands to allow for some further discussion with that landowner. If it's possible, we can come to a resolution. I think that's always best. It's not necessarily possible, but I think it's worth having an additional discussion with that landowner and South Huron Council. So that is a change from the recommendation that you had previously had in the report. Just finish up here in terms of housing, lots of great work in terms of looking at how are we building up and not out on our farmland. How can we create and promote more creative strategies to deliver more affordable housing? Lots of great ideas coming from the community themselves, and also pointing to examples of things like converted churches, revitalized spaces in the downtowns, and intensification of existing underused spaces as being opportunities. Minor changes to the commercial areas. Within the town of Exeter, we did seek to reduce the number of different designations and introduce a mixed-use designation, which allows for complementary development in and around the historic core, allowing for a bit more residential intensification in that corridor. Finally, the other key changes would be the addition of a land acknowledgement, the introduction of a new community-wide section. So that would address things like infrastructure, cultural heritage, economic development, climate change, some clarifications as to complete applications, and also opportunity for additional delegation of council functions to staff should council deem that appropriate. So some new options being introduced. The modification that was the subject of the delegation this morning is part of my recommendation. We had an opportunity to assess sort of the perspective of the developer, sort of what was the potential risks. From a staff perspective, we had always anticipated that this property would have a site-specific planning application with full analysis, a series of supporting studies. We had not anticipated that we would be making the land use change as part of the 5-year review. However, upon consideration, I can understand the concern in terms of residential needs analysis from the consulting planner. And so I wrote the modification to help address that. And what you heard this morning is that modification has been accepted. It does meet their concern, and it's also had an opportunity to be before South Huron Council. So I am recommending that council proceed with the modification. What it means is that they will need to do their own site-specific official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. What we are allowing is the relief of the requirement of a residential land needs assessment. So that's essentially what this says here. So, in conclusion, it's been a great project. Very happy with the outcomes overall. But the recommendation is that council receive the report from myself and Selena as presented for information, that the Council of the County of Huron approve the South Huron Official Plan number 25, the 5-year review as adopted by the Council of the Municipality of South Huron with one modification and as shown in the attached document. Further, that the notice of decision be circulated. Further, that the Council of Huron hereby resolve that the South Huron Official Plan Amendment conforms with provincial plans, has regards to matters of provincial interest of the Planning Act and is consistent with policy statements issued under that Planning Act. And further, that council defer the proposed land use designation change from urban to agriculture affecting concession 6, part lot 12, Stephen Ward, to allow for further discussions with the landowner and South Huron Council. It's a long presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Denise. A lot of information there, and I'm going to open it up for council's comments. Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I have a question and then a comment for South Huron. Denise, with the number of houses that are being built in South Huron, do we have any idea, not that this changes the official plan at all, but do we have any idea whether the majority of those new homeowners are going to be working in Huron County, or are we basically supplying cheaper housing for people that are migrating to the larger urban centers like London, where it's maybe cheaper to live in South Huron and drive to London to work? Do we have any idea how that ratio works out?
So Watson Associates report that was done last year did look at sort of the intra-provincial migration patterns. What they commented on a high level is that, yes, they do believe there's that pushing out of folks from urban areas. I would also say that with more working from home trends, there is the opportunity for people to live at a greater distance from their place of employment if they're only heading into work maybe 2 or 3 times a week. But it would be more of that anecdotal, that information from Watson Associates economists. I don't have anything specific to South Huron or Exeter.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to comment, Mr. Warden, on another point that Denise made in her report. You talked about a large industrial property that you suggested would be good for South Huron if they were going to be dividing that up into smaller lots to go and get it all serviced. I just want to share some historical information. Brussels had an industrial park that for years sat unserviced, couldn't give the lots away. council made the decision to service the lots. We couldn't do the paperwork fast enough to close all the deals once the lots were serviced. So that part can work out very well. But that was already a planned area with the lots already divided before the services were done. Because of that success, Huron East bought, and I can't remember the exact size of the parcel. I'm going to guess it was around 15 acres on the edge of Seaforth. We were going to do the same thing. We thought we had such great success in Brussels. We were going to do the same thing. But we got the feelers out there before we even got the lot service. Our plan was as a council to have lots between half acre to an acre and hopefully bring in a lot of small businesses and have a spot for them. Before we even got to do the plan of the subdivision, because we had put feelers out there, we had one large company come in and said, we want the whole parcel. So my words of caution are absolutely get your services up to the border. Whether you go any farther, I guess, depends on whether South Huron is looking for a large industry or a bunch of small ones. And you can still go either way if you get the services to the border of the property. But I still think that's a great move, because the closer it is ready for final development, the easier it is to attract. Thank you.
Good comment. Anything else? Councillor Finch.
Yeah, thank you. Through the warden, I concur with Councillor McClellan's comment there. It's a very much a moving target when it comes to development, whether it's housing, et cetera. I do know we have people who live in Exeter, work in London, and London people who come to Exeter to work. So it's a transition between the two communities. It's a successful story, quite honestly, of how successful the whole community works together. With regards to Fran Hammerford's comments and recommendations, I fully support what she's proposing. And I think we as council need to do that with the two amendments that she suggested.
Okay, Past Warden again.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. Aggregate resources, surrendered license post extraction. I was interested to hear that you walked around there. I just wondered, when you did that, could you visualize a housing development around that little lake now, or possibly recreational use?
Smiling as I answer this. Yes, I had a great walk. I had a great chance to discuss. I asked the landowners that exact question. Would they be interested in, increased policy flexibility for something like a recreational use around their particular property, and just generally for anyone who might have that type of property? They particularly, the Prout family, were not interested in that. But we did have a really good discussion about what they observe living so close to that type of water body. There can be changes in the shelves in terms of how the property was left extracted. Does it become more dangerous? For example, if someone was to get in, are they able to get out safely? They unfortunately do have some issues with trespassers coming into the property and always wanting to make sure that there isn't anything unsafe happening. But I also think we do have to remember that these water bodies, as much as they are past extraction and they are very appealing, they're still located in proximity to deposits which have not yet been extracted, and they're still located within the prime ag area in which we want to protect for agriculture and not introduce potentially incompatible uses. So I think that there's more discussion to have on that topic. I understand it was potentially one of County Council's strategic priority discussions as well. So happy to go into that further. But I did visit the site very much with this question in mind, and it was helpful, I will say, to get out there and to see it with my own eyes.
Follow up.
I think you're weakening.
So, and Denise, I think we all were anticipating that question. So anything else from council? So if there is not, then Denise did go through her prepared motion for us, and Councillor Finch, is that, and Councillor Finch would make that motion, and Councillor Dietrich would second that. Those in favor. And that motion is carried. Thank you, Denise. And I do believe there's a second motion for public and agency comments, and give us your recommendation once you're ready for that.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of the impact of agency and public comments, my recommendation would be 3B and 4A. Agency comments were provided, which were supportive in nature, which had the effect of council approving. In terms of 4A, it would be that public comments were received, much of which was addressed through the body of amendment. 2 outstanding concerns regarding the future development of site-specific parcels were addressed through a modification and a deferral.
All right, then I'd be looking for a motion to accept those. Then that again would be Councillor Finch and Councillor Klopp would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Denise. A lot of information you packed in there. And we're still in planning and we're going to go on to consent application C46 2024. And Shay is here to present. Welcome, Shay. And once you get settled in, you go ahead with your presentation to us.
Good morning, Warden and members of County Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to this consent application C46-2024. The property subject to this application is 76520 Kippen Road in Huron East. And the owner is Amanda McClure and applicant is Robbie McClure. So here I've just got an aerial photo of the subject property outlined in blue. The entire property shown is shown on the right image there. The property has frontage on Kippen Road, Front Road, and Front Street. The property is bisected by the Bayfield River and is just over 200 acres. The image on the left shows a more zoomed in perspective with the proposed lot to be severed, shaded in red there. And the property is located just south of Egmondville in Huron East. So this application proposes to sever a new residential infill lot from the remainder of the subject property. The proposed severed parcel is about 200 square meters in size, or half an acre, consisting of vacant land, and the retained area is approximately 199 acres in size, consisting of vacant agricultural land, natural environment, and a farm residence. On the left image here, the purple line just shows the extent of the residentially zoned portion of the property, which I'll speak to a little bit later in my presentation. So here I've got a sketch of the proposed severed parcel shown in blue here and the approximate lot boundaries. The image details the potential building envelope and septic location for a proposed development. Surrounding land uses here include low-density residential to the north and east, and agriculture to the south and to the west a bit. So the area subject to severance is within the settlement area of Egmondville and is designated urban in the Huron East official plan. Here I just have included an excerpt from the zone map with the approximate area proposed to be severed highlighted in purple there. You can see that this portion subject to severance is zoned low density residential. The remainder of the subject property is zoned general agriculture and natural environment. So getting into some of the comments received on this application, several concerns were raised by a neighbor to the east of the proposed lot. The neighbor noted objections to the proposed lot boundary, expressing that the east lot boundary proposed appears to be encroaching in what is believed to be their property. I discussed this concern and the lot boundary with the neighbor and noted that a legal survey would be required as a condition of approval, which would determine the actual lot limits. If the survey comes back and the subject property is deficient in lot size, then a subsequent zoning amendment application would be required to recognize a undersized lot. And the boundaries shown in the sketch here are approximate and would be verified through a legal survey should the application be approved. The same neighbor also noted some concerns related to the impacts of development on their property and concerns with erosion and stormwater due to the wet soil conditions of the site. These concerns were discussed with Huron East Public Works, who suggested that a development agreement could be entered into as a condition to ensure that proper stormwater management and drainage requirements are met, such as the development of any swales or ditches to properly direct water flows. And then the area subject to be severed is adjacent to ABCA's regulated area and contains a portion of the Bayfield River. As such, ABCA was consulted early on in the application and noted that they do not have any concerns from a natural heritage perspective, provided the proposed lot is entirely outside of the regulated area. ABCA did note that some filling of the area would be required, and the applicant is encouraged to work with ABCA for subsequent survey work and with any filling or alteration to the site to ensure this is done to their standards. And here I've just got an image for reference showing the map of the proposed severed lot in blue there in relation to ABCA's regulated area. That's the green shaded area, as well as the floodplain associated with the river. So that's the blue hatched area. The proposed parcel follows the extent of the regulated area, but does remain entirely outside. So as part of a complete application requirements, a hydrogeological study was completed to assess the soil conditions and suitability of a new private septic system. The study came back and concluded that the proposed lot could support a proposed residential development on private septic. As well, a stage 1 and 2 archaeology study was completed for this site and concluded that no further archaeological assessment was required. So getting into some of the policy framework here, the provincial planning statement provides direction for residential development on partial services within a settlement area that is on public water and private septic systems, such as Egmondville here, and permits infill development. Further, the Huron East and Huron County official plans provide similar direction. The Huron East official plan outlines several criteria for residential severances in a secondary settlement area such as Egmondville, including that the lot is appropriate size for development on private or partial services. The application has the effect of infilling the built-up area and does not result in undue extension of services. So in this case, the proposed lot meets the minimum lot size for a partially serviced residential parcel and is a sufficient size to accommodate a private septic system. Water services are available in the road along Front Street. And Public Works just noted that the proposed development agreement would also address coordination of extending the water service to the lot line. As a result, the application conforms with the county and Huron East official plans and meets the requirements of the Planning Act. So here I've just got several photos of the subject property. Here we are looking at the proposed lot from Front Street. The image on the left is facing straight back, looking towards the river. And the image on the right is looking a little bit towards the east. You can see the neighboring house to the east in the back corner. And then here I've got an image looking southwest, approximately standing near the eastern side of the proposed lot. And then I've just included an image from Google Street View in the summer for a better view without all the snow. So you can see here that there's a slight grade change with the property as it gets closer to the river and further away from the property. We noted that some filling of the property will be required to coordinate development. So the application was brought to Huron East Council for consideration at their March 4th council meeting. And Huron East recommended the application be approved subject to the conditions outlined in my planning report. As the consent application is consistent with the PPS, conforms to the policies of the Huron County official plan and Huron East official plan, and meets the requirements of the Planning Act, it is recommended that application C46-2024 be approved with the attached conditions.
Thank you, Shay.
Thank you.
So we are now entering the part of the meeting where the public can make comments. Anyone that wishes to speak can do so using the raised hand feature in Zoom or raising your hand in person. And I'm going to start. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this application? And going to turn it over to our clerk. Clerk Cronin, are you aware of anybody that wants to speak in opposition?
So if anyone is interested in speaking in opposition to this application, I ask that you do the raise hands feature in our Zoom platform or in public if you'd just like to raise your hand. At this time, I see no one interested in speaking in opposition.
All right, then I'm going to ask, is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Clerk Cronin?
At this time, I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
And I'm going to ask if the applicants have any desire to speak to the application. No. All right. Then we're down to council. I'm going to ask for council. And starting off, Past Warden McClellan, just the thoughts from here in East, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Here in East Council reviewed this with Jay, and I can't remember for sure, but I think it was even a unanimous vote that we felt this was good use of this type of property and expansion right on the edge of the settlement. So we are certainly in favor of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, any questions? And if there is no questions, I'd be looking for some direction. Past Warden again.
Yeah, I'd move the recommended motion.
So recommended motion, and Councillor Alvin McClellan would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. And Shay, I'll be asking for a second motion to follow up with public and agency comments.
Thank you. I'm recommending 4A and 4B in terms of public and agency comments.
So do I have a mover for that? That is Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Those in favor? And that is carried. So moving on to consent application C71. And Shay, you'll be presenting this one as well. So when you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Warden. So this is the presentation for consent application file C71-2024. The subject property is 43068 Bridge Road. The owner in this case is Thomas Ryan and the applicant is Tim Ryan. So here I've included an aerial image of the subject property outlined in orange on the right-hand side. The subject property is located on Bridge Road, about 2 concessions north of Seaforth in Huron East. It is a farm about 98 acres in size. And the application here proposes to create a new lot under the surplus farm residence severance policies. The proposed severed parcel is shown on the image on the left here, outlined in blue, and is approximately 1.8 acres in size, containing an existing drive shed. Council will note that the residence shown in this air photo has recently been demolished and is planned to be replaced. This is a 2020 air photo, so it's a little out of date. The proposed retained land is approximately 96 acres in size and consists of vacant agricultural land. So the property is designated agriculture, general agriculture, extractive and natural environment in the Huron East official plan. It is zoned general agriculture and natural environment in the Huron East zoning bylaw. And here I've just included a severance sketch of the parcel showing the proposed retained and severed land. Here we can see that the retained parcel is bisected by a watercourse in several spots. There are 2 existing drain crossings over the watercourse to access the east and west portions of the farm. And then here I've got a severance sketch of the severed parcel. The single detached dwelling here, as I noted, was recently removed. However, the owners have plans to replace the dwelling as well as the existing well and septic system. The sketch here shows the approximate locations of the new house and septic, just shown in the purple and red boxes there. I will note that a building permit for the new dwelling has been received by Huron East Building Department. In terms of comments received, as far as public comments go, 4 letters of support were received by neighboring landowners. Maitland Valley Conservation Authority was circulated and noted no concerns from a natural heritage perspective. And Huron County Federation of Agriculture was consulted on this application and just only noted a few clarifying questions. Municipal staff noted no concerns with the application, but did have a few comments that should be addressed should council approve the application. These are listed here on the screen and have been reflected in the list of potential conditions. The one I will point out here is that the existing septic tank on the severed property would be required to be properly decommissioned. And then Huron East Council considered this application at their March 18th council meeting. Huron East Council recommended several items be addressed should the application be approved. The first being that the lot size be reduced so as not to remove excess farmland from production. So the original proposal was for a 2.3 acre parcel, which did include a portion, a small strip of cropped farmland. The applicant was amenable to this suggestion and as such has adjusted the lot size to reflect this comment. So we've moved the rear lot line further south, resulting in a 1.8 acre parcel that includes minimal cropped land. And then there was a concern regarding the replacement of the previous farmhouse and wanting some assurance that the new house is gets built. So council suggested that a condition be that the house be built in a timely manner. In further consultation and discussion with the applicant is agreeable to a condition requiring that the foundation for the new house be constructed prior to finalizing the severance application. And in looking at some of the policy review here, so the PPS does prohibit the creation of new residential lots within prime agricultural areas such as this, except for a residential surplus to the farming operation resulting from a farm consolidation. So in this case, the owner does not own another farm containing a house. However, the retained farm is intended to be transferred to the owner's son, who does qualify as he owns another farm containing a house. So if council chooses to approve the application, a condition is suggested that the retained farmland be registered in the name of the qualifying farmer. The PPS also requires that an existing habitable detached dwelling be present to meet the definition of a surplus farm severance. Since the farmhouse on this property has since been removed and not yet replaced, although building permit was submitted, accordingly, this application does not meet the policy and is not consistent with provincial planning direction. So in addition to the requirements for a surplus farm severance outlined in the PPS, the Huron County and Huron East official plans also include some more detailed requirements. One such criteria is the requirement that no previous severances have taken place for residential purposes prior to June 28th, 1973, other than in a settlement area. And this June 28th, 1973 date is the date that the first county official plan came into full force and effect. And marks when comprehensive severance policies began to apply throughout the county. So the logic behind this criteria is to ensure that properties with surplus or with severances prior to comprehensive severance policies are not penalized, and also to ensure that further fragmentation of our agricultural land base is restricted for properties that have already accessed comprehensive severance policies. So in the case of this property, a prior severance took place to create a residential lot on the southeast corner of the property. That's at 43110 Bridge Road, and this took place in 1976. So I've shown that parcel in proximity to the subject property on the air photo here. So this property is considered to have already benefited from comprehensive severance policies and therefore does not meet this requirement. The policy is intended to promote long-term protection of the agricultural land base. So as a result, this application does fail to meet this criteria of the Huron East and Huron County official plans to be eligible for a surplus severance for the surplus severance policies. And since the application does not conform to the official plans, it does not meet the requirements of the Planning Act as well. So here I've just got a few photos of the subject property and proposed lot. On the left-hand side here, we are facing north towards the proposed parcel from Bridge Road. This image on the left here shows the area where the residence was located and approximately would be replaced. And the image on the right shows the existing shed remaining on the property. So this application was brought to Huron East Council at their March 18th council meeting. Huron East Council did choose to recommend approval of the application subject to a few additional conditions that I detailed earlier in my presentation and are listed in the staff report. As this application for consent is not consistent with the provincial planning statement, does not conform to the policies of the Huron County or Huron East official plan, and does not meet the requirements of the Planning Act, it is recommended that application C71-2024 be denied. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here for any questions on that.
Thank you, Shay. We are now entering the part of the meeting where the public can make comments, and anyone that wishes to speak can do so using the raised hand feature in Zoom or doing that in person. And I'm going to start asking if there's anyone that wishes to speak in opposition of this application. And Clerk Cronin, do you see any opposition?
There is no one that wishes to speak in opposition of this application at this time.
Okay, I'm going to ask if there's anyone that wants to speak in support of this application.
I see no one that wishes to speak in support of this application at this time.
All right, then I'm going to turn to the applicants. Is there anyone wishing to speak on behalf of the applicants? And if so, come up to the podium and give us your name and go ahead.
Good morning, Warden and members of council. My name is Tim Ryan. I'm the applicant. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak this morning. I just want to touch on a few points. I won't take up a lot of your time, but essentially what we're trying to do here is we're asking for this severance. Me and my wife both grew up on farms in Huron County, and about 10 years ago we moved to Perth County, where we live right now with our family. So we're wanting to move back to Huron County. As my parents start to step away from the home farm, which is now under my brother's name, they currently farm it. The need for more help on the family farm, it gets greater and greater each year. So I want to move closer to be able to help out during the busy season. And I can touch to a few of the points that Shay brought up about the existing severance to the east of our proposed severance. So Huron County has a historical map dating back to 1878, I believe. It's about 150 years ago. And on that historical map does show that the existing lot to the east, it was its own property back then. So 150 years ago, it was its own property, and today it's its own property. Whoever owned the farm before then, they had purchased that existing lot, put it back into the farm, and then only to take it back out in 76, I believe, using up our one allowed severance. And what we're really trying to do is promote farm succession planning. My brother's kids, they're still young, so he has his hands full, as you can imagine, running the farm. So we would like to move our young family back. We have a daughter to Huron County to be able to be there for him and help on the family farm. And as you all know, like, you can't split a farm multiple ways and expect that farm to survive. So I think we discussed this for quite a few years, and this is what we kind of landed on. And our family seems to be okay with that, and just having that proposed severed lot and being there to help the family farm. So I would ask that you vote in favor of this proposed severance. I think it benefits everybody. We're moving back to Huron County, using the arenas, using the stores, and I think it's a plus for the municipality. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Tim. Now I'm going to go to council if there's any comments from council. Go ahead, Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just to share a little bit. So Huron County or Huron East Council had quite a discussion about this. There was actually some interesting comments from some of my council members, as in, let's pass it. It's up to Huron County if they want to turn it down, which I thought was kind of an odd statement. I did share a little bit of historical information, and I don't see many faces sitting here that would have been here at the time, but Central Huron had a similar situation near the north end of Clinton at one point. There was a house there that had burnt, and person wanted to sever the parcel and rebuild the house on the same footprint. It was a long discussion of this council, but council agreed, you know what? And even in that situation, that land couldn't have been turned back into farmland because of the area and the features around it. Council said to do it. Somebody got to the province, and the province said, not a chance. And they were going to hold us to the wall on that one. And rightly so, county council decided it wouldn't be in the taxpayers' best interest to try and fight the province on something like this, even if we thought we had good grounds. So we backed down, and that person didn't get it. I do appreciate the fact that the applicant considered or agreed to shrinking the lot size, because I was really concerned when the application came to Huron East, because where that the back of the depth of the lot actually went halfway across that strip attaching the two fields, and I didn't think that was appropriate. My concern with this is that we're literally talking about severing off a piece so a house can be built and sold, whether it's lived in by a family member at this point or not. We're talking a farm parcel that's within 2 kilometers, or sorry, 2 miles, I guess 5 kilometers of urban centers where a house can be lived in. Being that far doesn't deter from doing cash cropping on these lands. It doesn't have to be this land, and this land could be turned back into. And the fact that it does break a number of the rules that we have in place. There has been a severance. I don't know about going back to the 1800s and what was ever done there, but the bottom line is there was a severance granted in the 1970s, and that's the way the rule stands. And I don't see the merit of doing this one for that reason, because if you go back to that map and you see where the one severance was, and now we're talking about severing off this one, well, heck, guess what? There's a real nice parcel in between that's just about the exact same size of all of them, and why not allow a house there in the future too? It just doesn't make any sense to start cutting it up. The whole reason we have these policies is to protect the farmland. It certainly is county council's position on or decision on how they want to go ahead with this, but I think we all agreed to the policies we have in place to protect farmland, and this would be an opportunity to have that land refarmed in the future. And I don't see that there's a need that that's where you actually have to be to give assistance to this farm. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Past Warden again.
I can support this application. I mean, there's buildings there where the house is going to be built. To suggest that can be turned back into farmland is a bit of a stretch. I mean, you'd have to take down a whole bunch of trees and a whole bunch of buildings. But the other part of it is farm succession. I've spoken about this at county council before. It is a very difficult thing at the best of times. If we want our farms to be turned over to the next generation, I think we got to give a little leeway there. And the last thing I'd speak about is the spirit of the legislation as opposed to the letter of the law. We don't want people putting in severance, putting in severance. That severance was granted almost 50 years ago. I mean, this is not of abuse of that policy. It's just fell on the wrong side of the calendar to 2 years late of being exempt from it. And I'm going to end up with one question. I'm always told that once a severance is always a severance. And I'm wondering if that applies to the original severance that was granted back in 76.
That, Shay, sounds like a planning question.
Thank you. Yeah, and maybe Sandra can speak up a little bit too, but from what I understand is the original severed parcel was merged with the farm back at one point. Yeah, sorry.
And Sandra, if you would have some follow-up on that, please.
Yes, there is a magical date under the Planning Act. I think it's in 1979. So anything created before 1979 is once a severance, always a severance. Anything created after that could have merged together. Or do I maybe have that the other way? Anyways, the only way now that they could, if they put it in the same name, it could merge back together. Once you sever it now, there's such a thing as a cancellation certificate. So once a severance, always a severance. Anything severed after 1979 is once a severance, always a severance. If you want to merge that back together, you would have to do a cancellation certificate that would now merge it back together. It's a new tool that was passed by the province to allow things back together because there was this issue of not being able to merge it back together. So that that one that was created before 1979, if they put it back in the same name, it would have merged, which is why they had to do the severance in the first place to resever it.
Thank you, Sandra. Councillor Klopp.
Thank you. I have to concur with what the lower tier voted on. I can appreciate the good discussion, and I'm not saying it was a whole majority of council, but it was a clear majority of council. And I think listening to the applicant coming here, we just talking about this, about how do we keep people farmland and houses. Well, this house is here already. Number one. And I talked earlier about what are farmers is about dollars, but I'll tell you one thing that also is right up there is farm help. And when I heard this young fellow say that he's going to be helping his brother farm, this property was already there. Maybe it would have been different, have been bare land. But then I think the lower tier council might have changed their vote. So based on that and the spirit of, remember, these rules are put in place at 30,000 feet. And again, that spirit, that's why the province allows the local to make decision. And following my philosophy, the lower tier felt this made sense. I have to go with that, but I also think that a couple reasons why they probably did, I can concur with and have no trouble at all supporting the motion that the lower tier stated.
All right. And I'm going to go to Elvin McClellan and get your perspective on the lower tier position.
Thank you very much. Well, I know it wasn't a unanimous decision, but to me, I struggled with this a lot. It ticks off a lot of the boxes, a lot of good boxes, so it does, and the reason for doing it. Where I'm stuck on is the second severance. How much weight will the province put on that? Will they look at that? And are we opening a door to more applications like this? That's kind of where I'm stuck at right now. Thank you.
Any other comments? Past Warden McNeil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. And I am challenged going against the planner's recommendation on this. We have rules in place for a reason. And if we vary from those rules, it's a slippery slope. Where do we reconcile that? So I have to think that the county planner recommendation is correct in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Councillor Dietrich.
Thank you. I guess I look at it. I understand the severance part of it. I'm not agreeing with that, but I look at it. This lot's already here. Is somebody going to go in there and tear all those buildings down and put that back into farmland? Absolutely not. So it's going to sit there and it's going to look like a deleted old place. So I understand it's not severed, but the lot is there. So I'm in agreement with the severance. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. May I ask a clarification question of our planning department, please? Because I think I'm a little confused on this. The first severance that we're talking about, what I understand now is it was a separate parcel that merged or was amalgamated into the larger farm and then had to be severed to become that original parcel again. That's the first severance. It just essentially took that parcel back and returned it to the state it was prior. Is that accurate? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, from what I understand from the historical review of the property, is there was a parcel that was was separate at some point in the 1800s that was approximately the size of that original parcel to the southwest of the property. At some point, it was merged back with the farm property, creating one whole piece. And then in 1976, that piece, a little bit smaller than the original separate piece, was resevered from the property. And that 1976 severance is the cutoff there.
Councillor Klopp.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again. It's on the issue with a point made that the province may come back and challenge this. Well, the provinces can challenge anytime. We've passed motions here, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, has been brought up. But that is not the issue here right now. We don't know what they're going to do. That's, again, their issue. I would like to think that the common sense of our government and that they would look at this and go, we're not challenging this. I was part of decisions like this in another life. And trust me, there was times we took on challenges. It does come through and they will be looked at. But I certainly hope that on this one, that Mr. Ford would say, I think or the Minister of Agriculture, because that's where it ends up going first, would say, thank you, we reviewed it. We're not going after that. But at the same time, that's not our issue here right now. I appreciate that, but it's not our problem. We've seen it before. We've challenged, we've made decisions later. Really, if it is sitting here, again, go back. It looks like it makes sense. I think the local council made the right direction, and I support that.
All right, Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Shay, could you please, or whether it be Susan, bring back up the photo of the way the property looks today, just for clarification for council. The only building that is there now is a farm shed. And in fact, if they want to go ahead and build a house on that property and have people move into that house to help out with the farming operations, they're actually still allowed to do that with the way everything is in place now. We don't have to sever the lot to do that. But if we sever that lot, then that lot can be sold to anybody down the road that has nothing to do with the farming operation. So Huron East has already granted the fact there was a house there at one time. We'll let you rebuild on that property. Not a problem. But the rules state you should not sever off another piece. So we're not hurting anybody by not doing a severance. They're still allowed to build the house. The family can move in. They can help with the farming operations. But why is there a need to sever it off, which then down the road could be sold to anybody, whether they're part of the farming operation or not?
Okay, last call for comments. Councillor Harding.
Sometimes you have to get involved in things and make decisions that aren't maybe the most popular, or you're rolling the dice about what's going to happen in the future. But I see very little wrong with this proposal, and council has supported me and a couple in Howick that were much like this, and I will be supporting this, and waiting for if there are any consequences. We have to look at these things individually.
All right, so I'm going to go to council and ask you to put a motion forward. You have two options, and I'd be looking for, Councillor Harding, you had your hand up?
Do I need somebody on that motion?
Yeah, it looks like you're wanting to put a motion forward. So motion,
To support the local council in this application.
so motion to approve the consent application
With presented conditions.
with the presented conditions. And Past Warden Ginn would second that motion. So I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of the motion to approve the consent application with conditions. That motion passes. Okay, Shay, I'd be looking for a follow-up motion.
Thank you, Warden. In terms of public and agency comments, I'm recommending 3A and 5B.
So 3A and 5B, do I have someone? Councillor Becker would make that motion. Past Warden Ginn would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Shay. And I'm going to call a quick recess. Give you a chance to get up, move around, stretch, and we'll reconvene in about 6-7 minutes. All right, welcome back. We are now at Cultural Services, and EFG is with us to answer questions if we have any on her report. Any questions for Elizabeth? And if not, then I'd be looking for a motion to receive the report. And that is Councillor Heffer, seconded by Past Warden McNeil. Those in favor? And that is carried. Under correspondence, is there anything anybody wants to pull from correspondence? And I do want to make a note of 12.11 that Dana Miller has graduated with an executive diploma in municipal management. And Dana, congratulations and
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
great accomplishment. Well done. So anything anybody wants to pull from correspondence? Seeing none, then I'd be looking for a motion to receive the correspondence. And that's Councillor Dietrich, seconded by Past Warden Ginn. Those in favor? And that is carried. Under new and unfinished business, we have some tender awards to consider, and Imran, Wyatt, and Andrew are all available for questions if there is any questions on the Colden Place recycling hot mix paving. Councillor Heffer.
Yes, just that I cross that road every now and then. It's really appreciated seeing that the price came down on County Road 7, and that looks a lot more favorable. Thank you.
And my only comment is living on that road, it's sure going to be nice going down a road that you're not bumping on all the time. So looking forward to that. Past Warden again.
I pulled a cattle trailer down that road once and I had to get off it. It was that bad. So happy to see that being done.
So you feel the pain of us in the north. All right. So have a recommended motion. Is there someone willing to put that forward? Past Warden McNeil
Happy
would,
to do.
and Councillor Harding would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. Medical supply contract for Huron Lee and Huron View. And Dana and Tammy is available for questions. Is there any questions regarding that? And if there is none, then I'd be looking for a motion. That would be Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Vanstone. Those in favor, and that motion is carried. Another contract for Huron Lee and Huron View. Dana, again, available for questions. No questions. Mover and seconder, Councillor Becker, seconded by Councillor McClellan. Those in favor, that is carried. Is there any notice of motion to be brought forward at this time? Seeing none, Then we have the bylaws to review and to give final reading to. Is there anyone willing to put forward the motion to adopt those bylaws? That's Past Warden McClellan, seconded by Councillor Harding. Those in favor? And that is carried. We do have a close to the public session, so we'll give our clerk a chance to get ready for that. And we will let you know when we're ready to begin.
At this time, we will be moving into a close to the public session. I ask those that are participating virtually to make the decision. I will either send you a message to join as a panelist, or you can exit the meeting. I'll let you make that decision now.
So I would now be looking for motion to rise from our closed session, return back to open. That would be Councillor Goderich. Councillor McClellan would second that. Those in favor? That is carried. And I'll turn it over to our CAO, Megan Wark, to do a report out of our closed session.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Warden, the purpose of going into closed session today was to for council to receive an update on a forest conservation bylaw court case.
Okay. Just to make you aware of upcoming meetings, specifically the Huron County Municipal Officers Association meeting on April 25th. I think this has just fairly recently come to our attention. So if possible, save that date and make you aware of that. And as far as the rest, regular scheduled meetings, you can make yourself aware of the ones that you're responsible to attend to. So I'd be looking for someone willing to confirm our actions for the morning. So Councillor Harding, seconded by Councillor Vanstone. Those in favor? And that is carried. And would anybody like to adjourn us? So that would be Goderich and Heffer. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you for your discussion this morning and the attention that was needed to those reports.